Okay, I just want to begin this by saying that if you are a fan of the Force Awakens and the way this new trilogy is going, that is fine. Everybody has their own personal preference and likes for things like entertainment, film, for instance. I like I like the prequels. I like the Star Wars prequels. I think they're all very good. They tell a good story. They tie into the original trilogy very well. And basically, you know, as I've said before on the matter of The Force Awakens, it was essentially a reboot of Star Wars, and I wasn't that fond of that film. Again, you can be if you want. I did like Rogue One more. Then again, though that didn't need to ever be made. I don't believe anybody was asking for a film about the rebels stealing the Death Star plans. And I want to try to make this short as possible. Yeah, in episode 8, some people not being all that fond, or not as enthused with that film, because apparently there's word that it's essentially Empire Strikes Back 2.0, just as people said Force Awakens was A New Hope 2.0, and the Han Solo movie, nobody really cares about that, really. I mean, people will see it, but it's not that high of a demand of a story that people wanted to see for a Star Wars film. Basically, I just wanted to say JJ Abrams, who is now replacing Colin Trevorrow, the director of Jurassic World. That's what Colin Trevorrow is really, at this moment in time, best known for. Was essentially fired by Kathleen Kennedy, the producer of this new Star Wars films, as well as the head, the CEO of Lucasfilm. I will say, in terms of JJ Abrams, I've never been a big Star Trek fan, so seeing his Star Trek movies, yeah, they were reboots. Though the second film, it was very much like The Wrath of Khan, just not done as well, not as liked. With Star Wars, he basically took the best moments, essentially, that he really liked from Episode 4, and with Kasdan, the writer of Episodes 5 and 6 of Star Wars, they made a script that was so safe, and it made a lot of money. Now, people have talked about JJ Abrams and they've criticized him and this and that, and some but fairly constructive criticism, sometimes just very unfairly. I was watching some videos on this whole thing, and someone said stuff like, Kathleen Kennedy has essentially clashed with every director so far of Star Wars, with the exception of Rian Johnson, who I guess I don't know what happened there. She just had no problem with that, with him. The Rogue One director was not there for the reshoots. He wasn't even in the editing room. Gareth Edwards, that was his name. Tony Gilroy, who wrote the Bourne films, the first 4 at least, and directed Michael Clayton. He reshot all that stuff. He did all the reshoots. And Gareth Edwards just did the ending scene, the big epic scene with Vader. And you know, and some people were saying, "Oh, like, well, JJ Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy did not get along during, because like there's like a certain point where he had some creative stuff going on, and she didn't want that." But it seems as if these directors that do stay on, if they have any creative vision, they don't get to. I don't know. Something happens where they just were. Apparently, there was one instance with JJ Abrams that she and him were having a disagreement, and then I guess she kind of just laid down, this is how it's going to be, and if you don't like it, you can walk. And he's like, alright, I'll just do it. And he didn't really try to, I guess, do anything else. Though, from Star Trek, his second Star Trek film, it was fairly heavy-handed in the whole Wrath of Khan. It seemed to be fairly Wrath of Khan-like, I haven't seen that movie in quite some time, so my memory of that is not as good. But then again, I'm not a big Star Trek fan, as I've already said. But I just remember there was a lot of Wrath of Khan moments in that film. And basically, it seems like he's not one to just, where if he has a big creative vision, he's not going to try and implement that into the film. And as a result, and the way you hear him talk about the making of the process, it kind of Force Awakens, it kind of comes apparent that's true, of which he was very on board with it, keeping it very safe. Though I'm curious what his input that was rejected was. I'm just kind of curious about that. But for the most part, JJ Abrams really has never tackled anything new. And what I mean by that is essentially anything all that original. He made now he did make a film which was he made Cloverfield. Well, he produced Cloverfield, but like he directed Super 8, which seems to be his most kind of original movie he's directed. And with that, and that's a big homage to the Spielberg films, because his directorial debut was Mission Impossible 3. It came out in 2006, and then after that he did Star Trek, Super 8, Star Trek Into Darkness, and The Force Awakens. He's an executive producer on The Last Jedi, and he's going to do episode 9 of Star Wars. So he's directed 1, 2, 3. He's already directed 6 films. He's directed a bunch of episodes of Felicity, Alias, Lost. He directed an episode of The Office, apparently he guest directed an episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Directed Anatomy of Hope, which was the pilot, as well as Undercovers. He's directed for 7 shows. 2, 3. Five of those he actually was a co-creator of. And yeah, his most original film directorially, was even a homage to Spielberg films. And that's not bad, but, in terms of other films outside of that he's directed, it's always franchises. It's always been something else. And, it's just interesting that Kathleen Kennedy gets directors who seem to be safe choices. In a way, the Han Solo film, the directors of that got canned. I guess they didn't like the direction they were going to take that and clashed. Didn't like how Colin Trevorrow was doing things, so they clashed again. And it's just kind of... there's this interesting thing going on. And I wrote a comment, it's very lengthy, but basically what I said from this video, it was a very interesting and good video about Kathleen Kennedy, was that, I'll just read from here. Kathleen Kennedy basically was associated with big names in her career, like Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. And she got famous from helping people produce some of the projects that she got to be a part in. And as a result, she got to be part of other films. Now, she's the head of Lucasfilm. Unlike George Lucas, she doesn't know Star Wars. She has no clue what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And this isn't really I'm not trying to take shots at her. It's just, I'm trying to look at this from a very realistic perspective. Basically, she thinks there needs to be a woman who's essentially invincible and great at everything as the main character, and thinks that's what makes the films work. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of the character Rey, because it's like she's like a cross between Luke and Leia, and I say Leia because she's the main female protagonist. But she's Luke because she's the main protagonist now, and she has the Force, but that kind of comes out of nowhere because there's no instance in The Force Awakens where it's like she sensed somebody or something coming, and there could have been a moment or two like that. So I think in the early on in that film, or if that happened, then maybe she could have a friend who, when she meets Poe, maybe that friend gets killed and they're all being shot at, and it's like, well, we have to go. And then, something like her sensing something or feeling the presence of someone that isn't there, but then gets there. She's not entirely sure how she knew that. And as the film goes on, when she hears about the Force, you can make the connections there just as she does. And also about the piloting thing, with this friend, they could have been talking and stuff about how, they liked flying around and stuff, this and that, and then how she's flown various types of ships, bigger than that little speeder she has, and things like that. That way, when she does fly the Millennium Falcon, it's, you know, not like a big, like, wait, what? She's kind of messing with the controls, and she's basically got a handle of the whole, of how to handle the ship. And it's kind of a bit of a head scratcher. You know, something like that would have been good, but that would have helped make the Rey character more interesting, in my opinion, and not this big mystery, because JJ Abrams has this thing of a mystery box where you throw a bunch of stuff there, you don't really explain it, you know. If you do explain it, that happens afterwards. So Star Wars, that happens in the next film, which he's only executive producing. You know, we're not going to really, hopefully in this film, we'll figure out more things about Rey, because otherwise, me being fond of that character is not very high at this moment in time. Maybe The Last Jedi can help change my ways, feeling towards that. If this movie's very good, maybe I can just forget some of that stuff in Force Awakens. I don't believe I can, but who knows? Who knows if the movie's really good at what it can do. Sorry for stopping in the middle of this big thing. I didn't write that, but I just kind of want to elaborate with the whole woman being basically invincible at and being great at everything. After I said that, I say story is important, because without a great story, what are the characters going to do? You know, you can have great characters, or characters that, put in the right situations, are great, but without the proper story, who cares? You know, who's going to care about that story? Who's going to care about those characters when there's nothing really that big of a threat, as much as maybe they try to make a threat bigger, or make a threat in the film seem so huge, but once the main characters, or maybe main character, faces this big threat, it's nothing, really. You know, without a great story, who really cares? George Lucas made stories for the, you know, the new films, these sequels, which are probably far superior stories than whatever Kennedy's think tank have come up with, because all they're doing right now is recycling the main plots of A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I wanted Episode 7. I wanted a continuation myself from Return of the Jedi, not just same story, new characters, old characters replaced, you know, other old characters. You know, the stories were probably better than what they've all come up with. But she and Disney threw those ideas out, as they thought they could do better than Lucas. Well, they didn't. At least not at this moment in time, with the story of the new trilogy, and with the way it seems from all that's been heard and talked about, with problems being had, it doesn't seem like it's going to get a whole lot better. You know, George Lucas at least persevered and made sure his story of Star Wars was complete with the prequels at the time they were made.